What if the theme this morning should be let? An important spiritual word, I think. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. Let brings to my mind Colossians 3:15-16. Let the peace of Christ rule in your heart. Colossians 3:16. Let the word or the message of Christ dwell in you richly. Even brings to mind Revelation 3:20, I believe. Christ stands at the door and knocks. Let him come in. But the handle is on the inside. There's not one on the outside. What about Matthew 11? Let us learn to live in the unforced rhythms of grace. Let us learn to live freely and lightly in God's grace. You see, I think in some way we're all God avoidant, and it may not even be conscious. But if we let God take control, if we let God love us, if we let God into our lives, then we're afraid that God is just going to mess up our lives, that he's going to make us miserable, that he's going to wreck our lives. It may not even be conscious that we think that way. Or we fear that we've done something so wrong, so terrible, so sinful that God is going to punish us. So we hide away in shame and fear. Well, what if we could learn to open? And I came across a quote by Henry Nouwen, who's a Catholic priest, writer, and theologian. Quote that really struck me. And he says in there at the end of his life, for most of my life I struggled with finding God, to find God, to know God, to love God. And he said, I tried hard to follow all the guidelines of the spiritual life, pray always, work for others, read the scriptures, do, strive, overcome temptations as best he could. But he said, I failed many, many times. And then he tries again, harder and harder and harder. And then at the end, he says, now I wonder if I've sufficiently realized that during all this time, God has been trying to find me, to know me, to love me. So the question is not how to find God. The question is, how am I letting myself be found by God? The question is not how am I to know God, but how am I letting myself be known by God? And finally, the question is not how can I love God, but how am I to let myself be loved by God? And he says God is looking in the distance for us, waiting for us to come and let him be love in our lives. So maybe we make it too hard, huh? Maybe we strive. Maybe it's not about striving or working or toiling, but maybe it's more about allowing, opening, receiving, accepting than all the striving that we do. So maybe the secret to the spiritual lives is this incredible little word of let. Maybe the secret is to let ourselves be found, be known, be loved more and more and more. And then out of that experience, to let that love flow. So can you see God running to you, looking for you, searching in the distance, filled with compassion? The moment you say let, running to you with compassion, love in his eyes, throwing his arms around you, kissing you, hugging you, and welcoming home with that little word of let. So today, let yourself be found, be known, be loved by God. Let God love you. Yeah? Yeah. And so, until next time, may you live all the days of your life.